Welcome to Business Talk, presented in collaboration with the University of Rio Grande and the Ohio State University South Centers, from the heart of southeastern Ohio at the University of Rio Grande TV studio. Our goals are simple: promote the University of Rio Grande and the Ohio State University South Centers, as well as advocate local small business and their support organizations. More importantly, promote southeastern Ohio as a wonderful place to live, explore, and learn. There are many different ways you can find us. The University of Rio Grande Cable Access Channel 17, live online at blogtalkradio.com, and on YouTube if you are unable to catch our show live. Introducing our co-hosts, Jason Winters, Mike Thompson, Patrick Dengel. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hey, welcome to our show. It is a pleasure to be able to present this special Business Talks program because we have sort of a unique individual and a unique set of circumstances. Back in September, the OARnet, the Ohio Academic Resource Network, awarded the University of Rio Grande Community College through Kingsley Meyer. Kingsley Meyer is the director of the Campus Computing and Networking program in which they supply a variety of different services, primarily on the internet and computing, throughout the campus. And what is so unique about this is the fact that there were many other universities that could have received the award, but they weren't. One of those recipients who accepted the award was Kingsley Meyer, and we're going to be talking with Kingsley about that award and about what makes University of Rio Grande so special. So I want to welcome Kingsley Meyer, who's the director. Kingsley, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here. I kind of feel like this is a shameless self-promotion day, but it was an honor in September to receive this award, and I'd like to just talk about it a little bit. OARnet turned 30 years old this year, and with the Ohio Supercomputer Center, you think of how long the internet's been around, and it has been around for about 30 years. At least the Supercomputer Users Group got started and needed to connect all the different campuses together, and for my contributions, the state of Ohio decided that myself and Larry Fox from the Wright State University were to be presented with that award. So I was able to have the award presented in September along with Larry. And I was pleased that our chancellor from the Department of Higher Education, John Carey, was there, as well as my supervisor here at the University of Rio Grande, Dr. Richard Sachs. So it was a special evening.
It should be, because it not only recognized you, it also recognized the fact that the University of Rio Grande Community College is doing some right things.
You know, when the internet first started, they looked for anchor tenants, the big businesses, military, government, healthcare, and education. And for that, Rio Grande stood out as a likely candidate here in this area. And what the internet looked like at that point was a string of telephone wires back and forth to major cities, and then the Third Frontier Network came around, which was what Doug Gale had proposed when he was director of OARnet. He said it's ridiculous to go out and buy individual telephone lines connecting everything. We should rent and lease fiber, and that fiber should be state operated. And today, the OARnet network is probably one of the leading networks in the country, and we're connected directly to it.
If I could just ask a couple questions, and again, we're coming from someone that is not very actively involved in the technology. What's the difference between telephone wires, cables, optic fibers?
Okay.
And maybe you could tell us a little bit about how how the University of Rio Grande Community College sort of gravitated towards.
Well, I won't go back to the early days of Marconi, but we had telephone lines, and the ability for you to connect to the internet nodes at that point was a dial-up connection, and dial-up only allowed you to do speeds so fast. And when you had a larger business, you bought a trunk line, and that's what the Rio Grande campus started with back in 93, 94. And so the campus got connected to OARnet so that our state library system could be right here on Rio Grande's campus. In order to do that, we had to connect to the internet, and so we wrote an NSF grant and made that first connection. And over the years, you can't do much more on copper. You get a second line, a third line, a fourth line, and it just doesn't aggregate to be the same capacity.
Well, if I could just sort of, when we talk about speed, I remember being down at Shawnee State University back in 1992. Maybe it was 93 or whatever. That was when they started being able to transmit pictures over. And I remember the librarian calling all of us in saying, what a phenomenal kind of thing this is. It only took 2 hours to bring in a picture. And they were using a phone line.
Well, it's about capacity. And I mentioned that we started with one line and eventually moved up to 4. But we needed to get more capacity because there were more users and we were doing heavier lifting tasks. One of the first things that the state needed to do was to make sure that we had in Rio Grande more capacity so that we could connect to it. And so they did a project called Access Appalachia. And they went ahead and did an assessment of all of the providers and mapped out where you could get connectivity. And if your campus doesn't have a connection nearby, you're not going to have the ability to connect at faster speeds. And Portsmouth was lucky to have a major connection. So the Access Appalachia group set up a mission to actually go out and map it so that businesses, families, healthcare, education would move forward in that process.
That's rather interesting. I know that you have been involved with, since day one it almost seems, with OARnet and with the bringing those different cable access programs to here.
Well, we used to have internet service providers, and there may be a modem bank in the back of a real estate agent or an insurance agent, and you could call in to get on America Online or CompuServe or one of the services. For us, we needed to connect to the State of Ohio network, and that was OARnet.
Now, why did you need to do that?
Because that's where the State of Ohio library system was housed. It was held first at Wright State University, and it was connected through the state network.
I see.
So we connected to that network, and our line went all the way from here to Columbus, Ohio. 2 lines, 3 lines, 4 lines. But what the Access Appalachia group did was they started to map out what was available not only for the education, but for healthcare and for residential, families. The project eventually grew to do a more realistic view of what you could have. Did you have access in the whole township all the way up to the far corners? So what we started to do is map out where the schools were, where hospitals were. It became evident that maybe we didn't have that type of connection from our service providers and our carriers. We started to look to whether or not we could build networks on radio towers. Where did radio towers exist? Could we use those to connect back? We knew that there were big fiber lines connecting major cities that went across our area, but they didn't necessarily have on-ramps for us.
That's true. And also with those cell towers, that's when the phones started coming in, the mobile, the smartphone, or not the smartphones, but the regular mobile phones to...
Cellular started to show up.
Yeah.
And I can't remember when I got my first flip phone, but it didn't do data. It did not do data.
No, right.
But the way the internet works is it starts with business and it starts with government working in tandem with those businesses so that you have your carriers enabled to provide connectivity. And in rural areas, the business model is a little bit flipped upside down. In rural areas, we do not have the census numbers per area so that a carrier can make a profit. And there is a universal service fee that helps bring money back in so that they can do the things that we need in these areas. And there are other projects that we'll get to here in a little bit that, kind of push it along. It's a process. It's us working locally to take care of our schools. It's our businesses making a case for it. It's these projects like the Technology Infrastructure Group mapping things and being the boots on the ground. And it's been it's been a good couple of years, 20 years or more since we started on this.
I know that business is very actively involved in the internet now.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, they used the phones, but healthcare systems, they were in need of a lot of moving of information, diagnosis, and things of that nature. Educational systems were very actively involved, and it seems that those entities helped to drive for Southern Ohio, for the rural areas, a more need for better communications, wouldn't you say?
After the turn of 2000 to 2004, a lot of things happened. Washington's our representatives to the House of Representatives, Zach Space, started to hold hearings in this area, and we started again looking with our healthcare providers. Not long after that, he promoted and supported community points of presence in our communities, so that once you establish that hub, smaller businesses could connect to it. But you had to start with the big ones.
Yes.
And the Southern Ohio Healthcare Network was funded by the FCC, and Holzer, Oblenis, Adena, and Southern Ohio Healthcare Centers all worked together and responded to the NOFA. They wrote proposals for the grants, and when they arrived in Washington, as the story's told, they looked around the room and said, well, you're from our area of Ohio, and did you get the grant too? And they realized that there was strength in numbers. So they formed a consortium, and the Southern Ohio Healthcare Network worked to do a consolidated RFP for the construction of that network. And Horizon Telecom out of Chillicothe, the Chillicothe Telephone Company, received that bid. And what they did was they decided to connect all of them together on one project. And as we looked at Rio Grande, speaking of the campus here, and you connect Adena and Southern Ohio Healthcare Center and Oblenis and Holzer, you realize that Rio Grande's kind of right on the map. And so one of those community points of presence was placed in the basement of our Davis Library. It became the digital hub for this area, among others. And the nice thing is, now we had a second fiber optic provider located right here on our campus. Pretty soon, banks, churches, schools, and other groups could go ahead and make a connection, and they didn't have to go out and find another provider because it was actually located here in their community.
We're going to take a quick break. I'm Patrick Dengel. We're talking with Kingsley Meyer. He's the director of the Computing Network and, wait a minute.
You allow me to do it?
Please do.
I'm the director of Campus Computing and Networking at the University of Rio Grande.
And we're going to be right back. We're going to find out how Kingsley got involved, not only in working with this, but he also was able to get a team. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. I'm Patrick Dengel, talking with Kingsley Meyer. He's the director of the Campus Computing and Networking team here at the University of Rio Grande Community College. Previously, we were discussing the fact that many of the different elements converged onto University of Rio Grande Community College with the capacity of helping push information, if I could use that, to various different points. And Kingsley was fortunate to be involved in that process which eventually led to his being the director. So Kingsley, we now have in the library, as you had mentioned, a portal, if you want to call it that, of data which you can push to various different places. How did you, what led you to be involved so much and to finally be able to have the kind of informational technology that you have here at the University of Rio Grande?
Well, I've been very lucky to have a great team in our department, and shout out to the staff that really keep everything running. Mike and Alan and Caleb are the backbone of making computing and networking operate here. But for myself, it was just a matter of being at the right time, at the right place when things were unfolding federally, regionally, statewide. There was a project that came up soon after the Southern Ohio Healthcare Network called Connect Ohio. It started as Connected Nation, which was a federal project, and in the state of Kentucky, they had Connect Kentucky. Connect Ohio came next, and it was the logical next stage. Now that we had a healthcare network, what was the next thing that we needed to do? And for Rio Grande, we hosted the broadband committee meetings here on campus because, again, we're one of the anchor providers. So there was a process where we did benchmark assessments, agriculture, education, business industry, residential. They all had a worksheet, and we developed teams that went through and scored ourselves, kind of like a SWOT analysis. And what we were looking at is the 5 A's of technology expansion. If it's not available, you can't do it. If you can't afford it, you can't do it. If you're not aware of how you connect, you don't get on. But once it's built, you need people to adopt it. Otherwise, the business model doesn't work. So after that, you have to have good applications online to justify the fact that you're going to do it. For the Southern Ohio Healthcare Network, it was logical. The radiologists needed to be able to read their imaging, and so that allowed them to connect hospital to hospital and even to the internet and overseas where specialists could go ahead and read those images. For us, it was online learning. And what we wanted to do is make sure that not only our campus was connected, but also our residential homes where our students and faculty lived so that they could get online. They could do their papers. They could get onto OhioLink and do that research. And so Connect Ohio published their report, and that was the next step. The funny thing about that is that there still wasn't a push out to the residential areas, and we can thank the CIO's office, the Ohio State University, for moving into this area. They did a pilot project in New Straitsville and in Chester Hill, Ohio, and then they knocked on the door here and said, can we hook up Vinton, Ohio? Could we put up a wireless network in the village of Vinton? So Al Eskovitz and his team chose our town up north on 325, and we put a wireless networking system on the water tank. Now, the way I got involved was I was the local tech support person. So after we hauled the gear and got it all set up, they had a satellite that was placed on the cement pad, pointed to the Tachyon satellite so that we could connect to the internet. And then looking down off the tower, you could see the village of Vinton below you. And we could say, gee, there's the town hall. And there's a Wing Haven, which was a women's shelter. So what we did was we went out to each of those homes and we connected them. We did all the wiring. We got the antennas on the roof. In the town hall, we set up a learning center with a computer lab. And all this was funded by somebody else's money on somebody else's leadership. But who in your community is going to do the work? And we had a bunch of volunteers. We've got a lot of people that have crawled underneath those buildings to set up the wiring, and it was really neat. And it brought the attention to AT&T that they should have been there first.
Well, that's very true, but I think sometimes you need a catalyst. And the thing that I have seen, I'm sort of fortunate in the fact that being an Ohio State University employee, and working with the University of Rio Grande, it really takes a number of individuals with some foresight, with some willingness to try some things that were not there before. And I need to commend you, your team. I need to commend the University of Rio Grande for taking the opportunity to push for things that other individuals, comes easy to them because they have personnel. But University of Rio Grande has been doing remarkable things with their technology that other universities need to copy.
Well, you can take my word on this that a lot of this was self-serving. Rio Grande comes first on any of these projects.
Sure.
And the reason why we did it is because if those types of connections and those opportunities serve the campus first, then the trickle-down effect, and this is not, the economic trickle-down, but the technology trickle-down is, if you bring it to your community, it flows outward to other communities and then to the homes. And the Connecting Rural Ohio followed up with another project in Crown City, and this time the antennas went up on the roof, and we hooked up their computer lab inside of that little town hall they have in Crown City, and immediately afterwards we had digital subscriber lines installed in every single telephone office here in Gale County. Didn't take much, but that was the catalytic event, kind of leading them to the point where they had to make a business decision. Connect Ohio went on with Digital Works, connecting people and jobs. They did a lot of training, provided them computers so they could move forward in their lives. Their newsletter that they put out from Connect Ohio focuses on successful businesses, and we had one right down here on 141, which was a local cabinet shop that said if they did not have that DSL connection, they would not have been as successful because they couldn't order their materials and have that type of delivery that today's just-in-time manufacturing requires. And again, it started because of one thing, and it leads on and on and on until finally all these things fall into place.
Yes, and I know that OARnet, basically is one of those, the Ohio Academic Research Network. Now, when you look at that title, they are more than just research.
They are, and that's where our governor's offices and the chancellor of higher education has decided that education leads the way, and research assists business. Now, there's a military network, don't get me wrong, but all of the state offices are on the academic network that got started by the state of Ohio. They took the lead, they built the Third Frontier Network, excuse me, but it came during the funding of the Recovery Act that they took the next step. And again, it didn't have anything to do with Kingsley Meyer, but they went out and they decided that they were going to apply for some stimulus money, and they built out a finer and more granular network across the state of Ohio. And this is called the Middle Mile Project. And it went through, everybody could apply for it. Our local wireless provider, JB Nets, wrote a proposal so that they could go out and serve more households. And when you started to look at the map of where fiber was available, now all of a sudden you have a much better picture. And we were able to connect our Meg Center, our MacArthur Center, back to our campus, and that allowed our community college to have a much better network to serve our students.
Kingsley, we're running close to being out of time, and I'd like to pursue this in a future follow-up. But one of the things that I do want to say is that OARnet did a really good job in choosing, and I know you represent the University of Rio Grande Community College, but it really takes an individual with foresight and with a positive mind to meet the challenges of the technology. One of the things that I'm really amazed is that we have 10 different devices at any given time that come on the computer. And they range from iPhones to smartphones to computers and laptops. And you're able to, with your team, be able to accommodate all of them within reason.
Well, we started by connecting desks in our computers, but pretty soon it was obvious that wireless was the next generation. And today, even in our homes, we have wireless networking connected either to a DSL or to a carrier's cellular network. And your imagination can only just wander to see where it's going to go in the future.
That is true. So we do have to talk about the next step that you have. As a matter of fact, Mike Thompson, who's the director of the Instructional Design and Media Services, Dwayne Rigsby, who's with the Ohio State University Technician Program, and you have a Tech Talk, and that comes on Wednesdays, I believe at 2 o'clock, the third Wednesdays at 2 o'clock. And you have a special program that's coming up.
Around the holidays, we always look at how technology affects us and what should be on the Christmas list. So.
Well, I'm looking forward to that program. I believe that's next week. I want to thank people behind the scenes. We have Kelsey and Valerie and Gabe and especially Mike Thompson, who's manning the fort back there, keeping everyone straight.
What a studio team, making
Yes.
us look good.
I want to thank Kingsley Meyer. He's the director of the Campus Computing and Networking Program. On that regards, I'm Patrick Dengel. Thank you for listening.
Be safe out there.